Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this video I will show you how to add Firebase Authentication to your Expo app. We will have a login screen, a sign up screen, and a forgot password screen, as well as some basic navigation based on whether or not the user has already logged in. The point we're starting at is the Expo Firebase starter, which you can find at this GitHub repository, or you can follow along with the Expo Firebase starter video. As a quick recap, you should have your constants/API keys file filled out with your Firebase configuration, which should look similar to this. And you should have initialized Firebase in your app.js constructor like so. There's one more configuration we'll need to do in Firebase. So if you go over to firebase.google.com and open up your project, click on the Develop tab, Authentication, and Sign-in method. This gives you all of your sign-in methods. For this video, we're going to do email and password. So if I click on the pencil to edit that and enable that authentication, which will now allow us to use email and password authentication. Now we'll go ahead and add our basic login, sign up, and forgot password screens. So we'll do that in the screens folder. We'll create a subfolder called Auth to store those in, and we need to create a login screen.js file, a sign up screen.js file, and a forgot password screen.js file. And inside of these we'll just put some basic skeletons of a screen, and we'll go back and fill them in later. So we'll do import React from React, import style sheet, view and text from React Native, and then export default class login screen extends react.component. For our render method, let's first add a constructor. Remember, you always have to call super props, and we'll initialize the state to be blank. For our render method, we will just return the text of the screen so that we know which screen we're on, and so that it doesn't get obscured by the clock, we will put some padding on the top, 20. And finally, we'll create a styles variable using style sheet. So style sheet.create, and here we can store our styles when we're ready to style it. All right, and we'll copy this into the other pages and just rename the class. Oops, and we should also change this. Now that we've got our basic screens created, we want to add them to our navigation. So go over to navigation and root navigation, and we will import those screens from here. So you should do import login screen from, you need to do ... to go up one level, and then screen/auth/login screen. And we can copy that for sign up screen and forgot password screen. And we will add these screens to the actual navigator itself, like this. You can name it whatever you'd like. So we'll call it login, and the screen is the login screen. Sign up screen is the sign up screen. And forgot password screen, forgot password screen. Okay, and we actually want these to be on the top so that they will appear first. So when we save it, we should see our login screen, which we do see right there. So what we have here is a root navigator, which contains a login page, a sign up page, a forgot password page, as well as the main tab navigator. And the main tab navigator contains the core screens for your app. Whatever your app happens to be, you will add your core screens to that. So what we want to do is determine somehow if the user has already logged in, and if they have, we'll send them straight to the main tab navigator. If they haven't logged in, or if they haven't even created an account yet, we'll send them to this navigator, which allows them to use login and sign up. So to do that, we'll go into the app.js, and here's where we're actually adding the root navigator. But what we're going to do is put some logic in here that says if the user is authenticated, instead of giving them this, we'll give them the main tab navigator. And if they're not authenticated, we'll send them to the root navigation. So in order to do that, we need to reference our main tab navigator. So we'll add our main tab navigator up here from navigation/main tab navigator. And we'll add a couple of state variables to determine whether or not the user has been authenticated. So the first one we'll say is authentication ready? That means have we figured out if the user is authenticated or not? And the other one we'll add is authenticated, and that will be true if the user is authenticated. So down here we'll add our logic, put some brackets here, and we'll do a switch that's on this.isAuthenticated. If it's true, we want to send them to the main tab navigator, and if it's false, we want to send them to root navigation, which has the login and sign up pages. And up here, what this section of code does is it says if the loading of assets hasn't completed, we'll show the app loading page. We also want to say if authentication ready if authentication is not ready, we also want to show the app loading. So we'll add another condition there. If not, this.state.isAuthentication ready. We'll send it to app loading. Now the way that you can figure out if the user is authenticated or not is by using a Firebase event called onAuthStateChanged. So in our constructor, right after we initialize the app, we'll start listening to that event. And the way you do that is by typing firebase.auth.onAuthStateChanged, and you pass it a function. We'll call it this.onAuthStateChanged. And this function will be called anytime the authentication state changes, meaning it could be when you first load the app and it figures out the user is logged in. It could be when the user clicks sign out and they go from being logged in to logged out. Any kind of changes like that will fire this event. So we'll create our function called onAuthStateChanged, and it takes a user as an argument. And if user is null, that means the user is not authenticated. If the user is not null, it means that they are. So the first thing we want to do is say this.setState, and we'll say is authentication ready is true, because once this event has fired, authentication has been initialized. And this.setState is authenticated. Like I said, if the user is null, it means they are not authenticated. So we've got these two variables here, and now you can see we are at the login screen because we have not been logged in yet. We haven't even created any accounts in our Firebase app yet. Now that we've got our navigation done, we need a way to test it, so we need to provide the user with a way to log in or create an account. So we'll go over to the login screen and we'll add some text inputs which will allow the user to log in. Now on a login screen, we'll have an email input and a password input, so we'll keep track of that in our state by adding an email state, which will initialize to blank, and a password state, which will also initialize to blank. In our render method, it's going to be a little more complex, so let's return a view. We'll give it some padding on the top of 50, and we'll align things to the center to make them a little bit easier to see. Put everything in there and we can get rid of that. Okay, so we'll add a text input. And for text inputs, in order for you to be able to see them, they should have a width and a height. So we'll put our width of, let's say 200, and a height of 40. Let's also give it a border, so it's a little bit easier to see. And text input also takes a value, which is what's actually stored in the text input, which we'll give it this.state.email. And whenever the text input actually changes, we need to update our state, so we'll say onChangeText. And that's a function that takes a text input, and we can call this.setStateEmail to text. And we'll close out our component, save it, and let's see if we like the way that looks. Okay, so there's a a text input, and we'll do a little bit more styling later on, but for now let's copy this and assign it to password right here. Alright, so we have an email, password, and we need a button that allows the user to actually sign in. So we'll add a button down here, and button title will be login, and on press will be this.onLoginPress. Okay, so we'll add a function here on login press, and we actually want to give them another button called create account, and when they press that, they will go to on create account press. On create accounts press. Okay, so let's see how that looks. Perfect. Alright, so what we want to do now is send the user to the sign up screen whenever they click create account. So to do that, we will update our on create account press function. Now in React Navigation, the way that you navigate to a page is you type this.props.navigation.navigate, and you give it the name of the page that you want to navigate to, which for us is sign up. If you don't remember why it's called sign up, it's because in our root navigation component, we named our sign up screen sign up right here. So I made that change. Let's test it out. When I click create account, it sends us to the sign up screen. Now I personally don't like this back button here, and in order to get rid of the back button, you need to do something a little bit special. It's a little bit more work, but if you don't want the back button, it's what you've got to do. So you need to use the navigation actions component from the React Navigation library. So first we will import that, import navigation actions from React Navigation. And then instead of calling this.props.navigation.navigate, we need to first create a navigation action. So we'll say nav actions equals navigation actions dot reset. And in reset, you need to say index 0 because you want to reset the navigation stack down to 0. And you need to give it an array of actions, which for us is just one action, which is go to the sign up page. So in here we type navigation actions dot navigate, and you specify the route name as the name of the page you want to navigate to, like so. Those are our actions. Now we need to execute the actions, and the way you do that is you type this.props.navigation.dispatch, and you give it the actions that you just created. So we'll save that and give that a try. Now when I click create account, I go to the sign up screen, and there's no back button because the navigation stack has been reset to 0. Alright, now it would be nice if we had a way to go from the sign up screen back to the login screen in case the user went there by mistake and they realize that they actually do have an account. So what we're going to do is we will copy our render method from login and paste it into sign up like so, and we'll make a couple of modifications. So for a sign up screen, you'll still need an email, you'll still need a password, and it's pretty conventional to ask the user for the password twice, so we'll make an additional variable called password confirm. And down here, we're setting the email or setting the password. Let's copy the second text input and set the password confirm variable there. Now our two buttons, we don't want it to be login and create account, we want it to be sign up, and we'll call this on sign up press, and we want this button to say back to login. And the function we will call on back to login press. Now remember, to use the text input and the button components, you need to import them. So up here we'll say text input and button. And since we're trying to go back to the login page, we're going to need those same navigation actions from before. So we will import navigation actions from React Navigation. All right, let's create our functions down here that we're calling when the buttons are pressed. So on sign up press and on back to login press. And we'll implement the back to login press. It's almost identical to the on create account press, except we're going to specify a different screen. So we'll just copy and paste that, and instead of sign up, it'll be called login. Once again, it's because in our root navigation we specified that the login screen should be named login. So let's save this, and hopefully we can navigate back and forth from the login screen to the sign up screen. So when I click create account, I go to the sign up screen. When I click back to login, I go back to the login screen. And we can't forget about the forgot password screen, so let's add some navigation in for the forgot password screen. The way I think I'd like it to be is on the login screen, you'll have the option to log in using your email and password. You can create an account if you don't have one, or if you forgot your password, we'll add an additional button for forgot password. So let's add a button down here called forgot password. And when we press that, it will be on forgot password press. We'll create a function called on forgot password press. And it's going to work the same way as up here, except instead of going to sign up, we're going to go to the forgot password page. All right, let's give that a shot. So here's forgot password, and we're on the forgot password screen, which we need to fill out, and we'll do that now. So come over here to forgot password screen, and once again, let's just copy and paste the render method from the login screen to avoid some typing. We'll replace this, and in order to use text input and button, we need to import those. Our forgot password screen will just take one input, which is the email, so the user will type in their email and click send password or reset password, and it will send it to their email. So we don't need this password text input. We've got this one right here set up to take an email, and we'll have one button for reset password and another button for back to login. So if they realize that they remembered their password, they can click back to login and log in. So the function here will be on back to login press, and here on reset password press. So create those on reset password press. And the back to login is going to be identical to the one on the sign up screen, so we might as well just copy and paste that from sign up to forgot password. All it does is send you back to the login page, and remember to use navigation actions. We need to import those from React navigation. Now one quick thing I want to do is I want to put a title on the top of each screen so that it's more clear which screen we're on. So for forgot password, let's just add a text that says forgot password. For sign up screen, we'll add a text that says sign up. And for the login screen, we will add a text that says login. And let's try out our navigation now. So we're on the login page. Remember, login doesn't do anything. We're going to implement that function next. When I click create account, I should go to the sign up screen. When I click back to login, I should go back to the login page. When I click forgot password, I should go to the forgot password page. And when I click back to login, I should go to the login page. Now we'd like to actually connect these screens to Firebase Authentication. One quick note is if you're unfamiliar with the Firebase library, you can go over to firebase.google.com/docs and get all the documentation. We're using the web library, so you can click web reference, and since we're dealing with Auth right now, we'll expand Firebase Auth and click Auth, and over here you get all the methods available to you in the Firebase Authentication library. Alright, back over at our login screen. In order to use Firebase, we first need to import the Firebase library into this screen. So you do that by typing import * as Firebase from Firebase. And logging username is actually very easy. All you need to do is type firebase.auth.signin with email and password. And you pass in the email and password, which we have access to here in our state. So I'll pass this .state.email and this .state.password. Now this function returns a promise, which means we can do a .then, and we get a success function and a fail function. So right here, this will be the function that we call when the sign-in is successful, and this will be the function that we call when the sign-in is unsuccessful. And when it's unsuccessful, we just want to alert the user the error message that occurred. And remember, to use alert, you need to import alert from React Native. So we'll save that and see what happens if we intentionally cause an error. So I'll just type in ABCD, try to log in, and it tells us the email address is badly formatted. So let's say we do abc@gmail.com, log in, it says the password is invalid or the user does not have a password. So it seems that that's working okay. And actually, since we don't have any accounts yet, we couldn't possibly log in. If you go over to your Firebase project and click Authentication Users, here you can get a list of users in your current project. As you can see, we don't have any, so we'll need to implement the sign up page so we can actually sign up and create a user. So over on the sign up screen, again, we will need to import star as Firebase from Firebase. And let's go ahead and add the alert in just in case we want to show the user an error message. And when the user clicks sign up, we need to create an account. Once again, this is very easy to do using the Firebase Authentication library. The way that you do that is you type firebase.auth.create user with email and password. And once again, this takes an email and a password, which we have in our state. So we say this.state.email, this.state.password. And once again, this returns a promise, so we can do .then and specify a success function and a failure function. Now, we're not utilizing the password confirm right here, so what we need to do is, before we even try to create the user, let's just make sure that the two passwords match up. So what we'll do is say if this.state.password does not equal this.state.password confirm, we will alert a message to the user, passwords do not match, and we will return from the function to give them a chance to type in the correct password. Once again here, when there's an error, we will alert the error message to the user. And we haven't done anything in our success functions yet, and the reason for that is because we've actually already handled it in our app.js. Remember, we listened for the auth state changed event, which occurs anytime the user logs in or logs out. And so as soon as an account is created or a user logs in, it's going to fire this event, which is going to set is authenticated to true. And down here, it's going to change our navigation to the main tab navigator. So we actually don't need to do anything in our success function unless you want to do something special, like tell the user that they've successfully logged in. But it's not necessary for us. So let's test this out. We're going to create an account, and for the email, we'll type a@gmail.com. Password will be AAA. Let's do all lowercase if I can. Oh, it's not letting us. We're going to format the password field later. And if we click sign up, well, it didn't redirect us, but it did create the account. So we'll need to figure out why it didn't send us to the main tab navigator. All right, I've discovered why the pages were not navigating correctly. It's because in our app.js, when we're checking the is authenticated, I typed this .is authenticated. It should be this .state .is authenticated. So if we save that and navigate now, you see we go to the main tab navigator. Now in the main tab navigator, we're going to add a button to sign out so that we can go back and forth between the login pages. So let's go to our main tab navigator. And you see that the page we're on is the test screen, so we need to go into screens, test screen. And we'll add a button to allow the user to sign out. So button title will be sign out, and on press will be this.on sign out press. Put on sign out press. And in order to use the Firebase functions, once again, we need to import the Firebase library, import stars Firebase from Firebase. And in order to use a button, we need to import button from React Native. All right, so to sign out a user, you type firebase.auth. I believe it's sign out, but let's double check in the documentation over here. Do a quick search for sign out. There it is, sign out. Okay. And again, you can do a promise for what happens when it's successful or unsuccessful. In this case, I don't want to tell the user that we unsuccessfully logged out, and the success should handle, our navigator should be handled already. So let's save that and give it a shot. We're in the sign out page. When I click sign out, it sends us back to the login page. And if I type the email and password and click login, it sends us back to the main tab navigator. If you noticed a second ago that when we reloaded it temporarily went to the main tab navigator before sending it to the login page, that's because we have a small bug in our logic for how we decide what screen to show. So if we switch over to app.js, what we did here is we said if isLoading is not complete and authentication is not ready, then we show app loading. What we should actually say is if either of them are not ready, and let's surround those with parentheses just in case. So now it's saying if the loading is not complete or authentication is not ready, then we will show the app loading screen. If we save that, we should now not get the flicker, we should go straight to login. Now we know the login is working, the log out is working, and the create account is working. The last thing we need to do is add the forgot password functionality. So let's go to our forgot password screen, and once again we need to import star as Firebase from Firebase and implement the reset password press functionality. This is once again very easy to do. We type firebase.auth.send password reset email, and it takes an email, which is this.state.email. Once again, this is a promise, so we'll have a success function and a failure function. And once again, when it fails, we want to alert the user and give them the error message. Remember, we need to import alert up here. Now in this case, you may want to do something differently. You may want to say, okay, we've sent your password reset email, check your inbox, something like that. So let's do another alert to the user and say, password reset email has been sent. And let's test all of that out now. So I'll click forgot password, type a@gmail.com, reset password, and it says password reset email has been sent. If we were to type something that's maybe not a real email and click reset password, it gives you an error message there. Now, I can't actually test this because I don't own the a@gmail.com. You feel free to use your own personal email and test it out if you don't believe me, but I've tested this in the past and it does send you a password reset email. Now this tutorial is for how to implement Firebase authentication in your application. It's not about how to make a nice looking login and sign up screen. So I won't spend too much time making these pages look nice, but we will do a little bit of fixing up of the text inputs to make them look and behave a little bit better. So let's go over to our login screen here, and there's a couple things we want to do. First, I want to put in some background text that tells the user what they should be typing in here. Second, it'd be nice if we can, since this is an email input, present the user with the email keyboard. And third, since this is a password field, we want to make the characters appear as little stars or dots or something like that. So if you're unfamiliar with the properties associated with text inputs in React Native, you can go to the React Native documentation for text input. And to put the background text, it's called placeholder text, I believe. So let's search for that. Or maybe it's just placeholder, I think. Okay, placeholder. So down here in our text inputs, we will add a a placeholder, and this one will be called email, and this one will be called password. I'm also going to just put a little bit of spacing in between them because I don't like how it's looking right now. So we save that. And now you can see we've got email and password placeholder text in there. To specify the keyboard type, let's check the documentation again, and I believe it's keyboard type. And here are your options: default numeric email address or phone pad. If you're using iOS, you have some additional ones, and Android has one as well. We want to use email address, so over here we'll say keyboard type equals email address. And for the password entry, that is called secure text entry, which is just a Boolean, true or false. So for password, we want secure text entry equal to true. All right, so let's save that and test it out. I don't have the email keyboard on here, so we'll have to test that on the device. But when I type in a password, you can see it blanks out the letters as I type them, just like a normal password field. Now, one last thing I do want to do is I don't want these to be capitalized, and I also don't want autocomplete, because most of the time emails aren't going to show up in your autocomplete. So the property for capitalization is auto capitalize, and that gives you a few options. Characters, words, sentences. We're just going to set it to none because we don't want it to auto capitalize anything. So auto capitalize equals none. I'll do that over here. And the autocorrect is also called autocorrect, which, let's find that, here it is. That's actually a Boolean, so we'll just set autocorrect equal to false. And we'll save that and test it out. So if I type ABC, it's not trying to correct anything I'm doing, and also the A is no longer capitalized, same with the password. Okay, let's try to log in one more time, make sure that works. Log in. The password, well, the first letter was capitalized, so we click login. Okay, great. And we sign out. And let's go ahead and make those changes on our sign up screen as well. Let's copy and paste these for the email. Go over to sign up screen, and in our email input, we'll put those. For the password ones, let's copy these. And maybe for the password confirm, we'll just put password confirm. Save that. And we'll also put a little bit of spacing in between the text fields to make it look a little bit nicer. In your actual application, you can put whatever styles you want down here in the styles section. So I click create account. I've got no autocomplete, and password fields are looking good. The last thing to do is the forgot password screen. So since that had an email, we will just copy the email from login. Move over to our forgot password screen, and right here, paste those in, save it, test it out. When I go to forgot password, I get the word email. I don't get any autocomplete or any auto capitalization. So that's all you need to do to have a very basic authentication workflow in your app. I would encourage you to update the styles of your pages to make them look a lot nicer than they are here, but this is all you need to get going.